Hey everyone, welcome back to Money on My Mind. Today's episode is a bit different. I had the chance to be a guest on Self-Improvement Daily with Brian Ford, and I wanted to bring that conversation straight to you. We dug into some really important topics like how to take control of your money, build real financial momentum, and why clarity and consistency are key when you're trying to improve your life and your finances. It was a quick but powerful conversation, and I know you'll get a lot out of it. Let's jump into it. Here's my interview with Brian Ford.
And we are live. Today's guest is Brennan Schlagbaum. Brennan is a former CPA who made a bold pivot from the corporate finance world and $304,000 of debt to become one of the most trusted voices in personal finance through his brand, Budget Dog. His mission is to simplify financial education for everyday people, and he's helped thousands of families take control of their financial future. He's got the Money on My Mind podcast, a fairly new book called The Roadmap to Financial Freedom, and a deep understanding of human behavior and how it interfaces with our relationship with money. Mr. Brennan Schlagbaum, it is an honor to have you on the podcast. Welcome, brother.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Appreciate it, man.
Sweet. So we cannot start this conversation without talking about the natural overlap and mashup between personal development and financial literacy. And it's an important topic because finances truly are connected to our well-being. There are so many statistics that suggest that. So, we have this tendency to kind of avoid it, to feel ignorant of it, to kind of push it aside. And the more that we can look at it and integrate it as a part of our life, I think the better. So the first thing, of course, that comes to mind is this idea of a money mindset. It's a very popular topic. And I just want to start there. So what do you think of when when you're asked about, kind of what is a money mindset and how to support people in creating a more positive money mindset?
Yeah, this is like one of the most important things that you can actually start with in personal finance. So a lot of people will go to like a budget or, investing in index funds or ETFs. Those are all good things, but the mindset behind how we became wealthy and also all my students become wealthy is the money mindset. And so the first thing I have all my students do is work with a behavioral psychologist within my service called Budget Dog Academy. And I think it's super important to do that. So when they go into this money mindset, most people think it's like a corny little thing, like you're just gonna like brush up on some things. My behavioral psychologist, Heather Brito, will uncover your subconscious and exactly why you're doing what you're doing, probably within a matter of 15 minutes. And so she will bring up things that, flashes from the past of, oh, wow, I forgot that happened to me when I was a child. And maybe that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Or, oh, that relationship I had when I was 18 years old that ended up really bad. Maybe that's why I'm acting the way I'm acting. And I'm showing off my wealth to, do X, Y, and Z. Or my neighbor is, getting a new car. So therefore I need to get a new car. And it's not necessarily my neighbor, it's actually because I felt insecure growing up because I had nothing. And now I need to compete with everything everybody I'm in contact with. And it just happens to be my neighbor that got the new car, which is dictating my behavior. And so money mindset can play out in many different ways. But what I will say is it's a consistent theme that those individuals that address the subconscious, which controls basically 95% of our behavior, are the ones that will actually be successful. And so the money mindset itself needs to be a focal point, but your specific money mindset is going to be adjusted based on your experiences in life. And that's okay. It's just to come to the terms with what has really been the demon in your past that's held you back from achieving, financial freedom that you want to. And it's a really encouraging step to take because once you do that, you become aware. And awareness is usually that first step to really take it to the next level and become financially free. And oftentimes it's not as like daunting as people think. It's like some people are like, man, I got to really address these demons. But I can tell you this is every student that walks through this process would tell me the same exact story. They go into that meeting with the behavioral psychologist focusing on money mindset, and they instantly are like, I'm really nervous. Like, this is going to be a big step. I don't know if I can do this, to coming out and saying, oh, Heather was like the best person ever. Like, this is so awesome and so encouraging. Now I know exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. I can make the proper changes. I can adjust myself so that when Brennan, you as a CPA, come in and help me out with all the financial technical how-tos and the process and the systematic approach, I can actually focus on that because I've addressed my money mindset and I'm still working through different things that she's giving you tips and tools and tricks to be able to use that and improve upon it with time. So money mindset comes out in many different ways for many different people because we're all very unique and we all have vastly different experiences, but it's important that you come and address that specific, thing within your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're talking about the underlying beliefs of what we actually think, right? And that's where I think of the Jack Canfield formula, which I think it governs our life, which is E plus R equals O, right? Event plus response equals outcome. And an event itself doesn't have meaning until you assign meaning to that event. And that's where our unconscious response, as you're describing, that fills in the gaps and it fills in the blanks of, this is exactly how we're going to extrapolate what this means about me. And it could be this old trauma, it could be this newer experience, and it just the beliefs formulate in any number of ways. And as it relates to mindset, my definition of it is it's your patterned way of thinking, right? So your patterned way of thinking comes from that belief system, and as it relates to money, it's how do you consistently and recurringly think about money, right? So you have to do that work, because then that changes the lens through which you see all of the financial opportunities and financial situations, and it's by being able to control that response, now we can actually direct our action more empowering, powerful, and successful ways.
I like
And
how you said opportunity there. That's a really just I listened to that word. I was kind of hearing you there. A lot of times people look at these challenges or past, experiences as bad or like, learning lesson. I've always looked as opportunity. And so like we've been through a lot on a personal level, just, I mean, literally this past couple months. And so every time something comes our way, I always re-engineer that and think about it as an opportunity. I'm big into my faith. And so I think that God gives us these opportunities to have better perspective to help more people. And when you reframe it like that, I think it's a very powerful mindset shift that will change the way you see things. So when things suck, quote unquote, you look back and you're thinking, okay, what is the lesson I'm being given right now? And what am I being told right now? Because that simple mindset shift where you said opportunity, I think will change the outcome of many people in a sizable way. And so that's a really important thing that you mentioned. And I try to train and talk through my podcast myself and just through my content. Those types of things are just pivotal. And you'd be amazed at how small the little thing like that is, but just like AI is recreating, our brain patterns, we can recreate our brain patterns ourselves. We have the power and potential to do that if we want to. It's just intention and focus.
totally. Yeah, no, and I think it takes work to get to that money mindset. I think that was actually almost an expression of my money mindset is I, chose to use the word opportunity, and you get there over time. And one of the things I heard you say that really stuck out to me, which is also kind of a reflection of a positive money mindset, is how wealthy people don't see everything as a scam. And it's the way that we relate with these events that happen. It's, there's this objective, meaningless thing that happens. Then all of a sudden you see it and your perception, your lens is applied to it. And that's how wealth is built, is people take risks because they calculate that. They're not afraid of it. They're not scarce with it. They're abundant and they see the opportunity in what's around them. So that's
yeah, changed my life a lot. Like when I was 22-ish years old, I grew up in a family that was very middle class, worked hard for our money and didn't know what investing was. And so like everything I earned, I kept and I saved. And that actually hurt me. And I didn't think of it like that when I was growing up. I was like, man, I'm really good at saving money. But those simple mindset adjustments are powerful because I did grow up in a scarcity mindset of I don't have enough. I need to accumulate, save, and keep versus now I spend more money than ever, technically speaking. It's on smart, wise decisions. It's not reckless decisions like a Lamborghini type deal, but it's education, it's mentorship, it's access, it's a deal flow and things like that. And I spend more money, but I make more money as a result. And I never feel like I don't have enough. Like, it's just like, I know it's going to be there because I'm focused on the value creation and being able to give value to people. And I also don't need a lot. So it's a very easy, balance to maintain.
Yeah, no, you're commenting on kind of like how money is a currency, right? And currency, like an electrical current, there's energy and there's flow to it. And the more that you put into the ecosystem, the more that's available for it to be returned to you. And people, hesitate to trust that principle, and that's kind of part of the unlearning and relearning that needs to happen in order to use money to its fullest potential and to support you with it. No, so I love how you like have been able to kind of articulate that for yourself. Now, what do you think is like the specific reason why people are afraid of trusting and intuitively knowing that there's a currency to this, right? Like people are afraid of looking at their finances. People are negligent of their finances. Like, what do you think is the kind of the root of that? because, my belief is we're connected to abundance, and it's only us getting in the way of it that's keeping us from accessing it, right? So what do you think are some of those roadblocks and obstacles getting in the way between that abundance?
Yeah, I echo that a lot. And another thing is like, this takes time. Like, don't expect like snap your fingers and this to happen. Like, even to this day, like I'm still working through this at different times. We've went through a lot over these last 3 months, and I saw myself even reverting to that. So like, just because we're talking about anyone listening, like realize we're human too, and we still have challenges to this day, and we still work through those things. As far as what's that root cause that's holding people back, I think it's awareness. And it's interesting. I think the way we grow up is extremely powerful, and I've recognized this as I become an adult, and I've grown into independence and stuff like that, of starting to think things on my own, my own thoughts and my own beliefs and my own experiences outside of, hey, when you grow up, you're like, your parents tell you a bunch of stuff. Those are like the old people in your life that you trust and believe in. So your belief systems are very much so shaped with an adolescent mind by your parents, and the way they tell you things and what they say is kind of like almost like dogma. And so you got to be very careful thinking they're always right. Now, your parents might have good intentions, but you got to challenge the status quo. And I think the more you realize the lack of awareness to the bigger picture dictated or maybe formulated by your parents, it's actually a huge deterrent to like understanding money does have flow. And sometimes you might come from a household that's not what they're holding you back. And then you might come from a wealthy family where they do talk about that, but they might be holding you back from something else. And I love my parents to death, but they have their beliefs. They have all their things that they taught us. And growing up, I just thought, well, you work for your money, and we don't invest, we save money. I don't even know what investing was when I was growing up. Like, that's how little we talked about it. I didn't even know what a Roth IRA was or anything like that. And it was just, my parents didn't know that. And they told me everything. I thought everything they told me, they should know all the answers, right? They're the old smart people, and I'm the young 5-year-old kid. And so I think you have to question everything you're taught, because everyone comes from their own experience, their own limitations. And the more you open up and experience different cultures and conversations, the more you talk to people, the more you're going to really live life and experience the fullness of it.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was such a perfect way of bringing up what like an old belief can do and the roots that it has, right? Like you said, oh, we work for our money, right? And as a little kid, you're this, kind of, you're just ready to go. You're a sponge. And that's what you learn, like, oh, well, that's how money works, is you have to work for it. Then it creates this relationship. Oh, well, it's supposed to be difficult. You have to earn it. It's going to be hard. And then that shapes your perception to keep you from trusting that, oh, there are easier ways to make money. I can make my money work for me. And like, that's a perfect example of how, as a kid, we learn to incorporate these beliefs. These beliefs go unchallenged and then express themselves in our adult lives and shape the way that we interact with different money situations, right? So I think that was a perfect point to articulate.
I really struggled with the jump from W-2 to entrepreneurship. I really struggled with that mentally because I was so used to being a CPA, working until like getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, and I grew up like that. And so all of a sudden, like, I was creating my own paycheck in a sense, and it didn't come every 2 weeks, and it depended what I did. And it was like such an emotional high in the beginning, but very quickly after, about a month or two into it, I was like, wow, this is like a huge anxious type of feel at all times, because I was so conditioned as a child thinking that was my belief system. Sure. And like, now I've just worked through it because I've kind of had to survive in a sense, mentally. And so I've just found a way to generate income, and now it's like not even really much of a thought as it once was. I was like, I know it would be there because I have tons of value, and I can, help and give and serve, and I'll do all these things. I'm not worried about the money. That's gonna be like a byproduct of what I focus on. But that was so deeply ingrained in me. And I think there's a lot of different beliefs like this, systems that in people's lives, that they don't even know it's a belief system. They're just like, this is just a truth I've been told and I understand, until you challenge what has been taught to you.
Right. Well, that's what beliefs are. Beliefs are your truth. It's the way that you believe the world works. That's why you have them in place. And those truths aren't permanent, and that's kind of the opportunity, which is what I want to kind of transition into. You mentioned like, hey, these things don't change overnight. You can't snap your finger, and I have my tactics and understandings for how you can actually reshape beliefs, but my two theories are, Spaced repetition, so consistency, is another way to kind of stack evidence that you're a different type of person, that you believe a different thing to be true. And then also significant high affinity emotional moments, call it trauma, but positive and negative traumas, those kind of can reshape your wiring and belief system, and to see the world through different eyes, right? And I know that, kind of the slow shifting that you've been referring to is like, yeah, but it's been a process. It's been an evolution from who I was to who I am now. That's been your journey, but I'm sure that you can accelerate that now that you have kind of the systems and programming within Budget Dog. So how do you think about kind of the slow journey of getting people to, question, challenge, reshape their beliefs? Like tactically, how do you help people with changing their money mindset in that way?
Yeah, so like my behavioral from an execution standpoint, my behavior psychologist works with them right off the bat. And then we have our student success team that's working with them through each and every step. So on the emotional side of things and the mental and the behavioral side of things, we're going through a market turbulence right now, and so a lot of people are like a little uneasy working through that, talking with them, reminding them of those principles that we learn. I think that's important. As far as like how I've taught myself and how I've like changed my mindset with time, I think the most important and the most obvious and most practical way to go about this is just surrounding yourself with the right people. Like if when I went to Deloitte, and I was fresh out of college, like I didn't know what investing was, but I surrounded myself with people unintentionally but intentionally at Deloitte that just were like very in tune with that language, and like they would, do that like stuff is what I used to call it. Like they just did it, and that was like part of their life. When I started talking with them and I started getting and picking up on Deloitte mentors, I'm like, oh, this stuff is like normal. Like everybody does this, I guess. And funny enough, is my mentor, he was a derivative specialist at Deloitte, doing crazy numbers, 2.5 billion a year. And he lived like he basically lived 5 minutes from my high school. But what he talked about versus what my parents talked about, vastly different. But if I would have just put myself in his circle for, more than a couple years, that would have been my normal. And so a lot of times it's who you talk to, and then you start to make connections and you start to hear, oh, he just said that. He also said that. They both have what I want, which is wealth, financial freedom, being able to move up in the corporate world at the time. And why don't I listen to what they have to say? Because they've done it. They're practical experts in the field. So finding somebody that's like done what you want to do and surrounding yourself with those types of people, like all over the place. You're not just in person. Like it could be a podcast. It could be YouTube. It could be all the people you follow on social media, because we're very digital in today's world. So I'm very intentional about who I follow. I'm very intentional about what I see online. If I start seeing stuff that's, way off topic, I hit not interested on Twitter, just because that can fill your feed with bad stuff, and what you feed your mind is who you become. So it's really important to surround yourself with the right people. I went to lunch yesterday with one of my mentors here and one of my good friends in the DFW area, and we just talked about business, and we talked about, helping and serving is his big passion as well. And he has a real estate brokerage and leadership he talks about, and speaking on stages and all these cool things. And like, that's just not how I grew up. My friends in high school and college were like, hey, what type of beer are we going to drink this weekend? And like, all love to them, but it just wasn't the crowd that I really saw myself with long term, because I just saw so much potential myself. And anytime I'd bring those kind of conversations up, they would laugh and make fun and shoot their shot at me, which was all, fun and games. But if that's constantly happening in your circle, where your ideas, your potential is getting shot down, you start to believe that it's like, hey, maybe I'm being a little over the top. Maybe I shouldn't pursue that. Maybe I shouldn't think that. And you become who you are surrounded by. So it's such a practical, simple exercise, but go through your YouTube, go through your podcasts, go through your, the music you listen to, go through the followers on social media, and just eliminate anything that doesn't align with what your values and what your mission is.
That is such a good point of feedback. The two theories of transformation are outside in and inside out, right? What you're commenting on is outside in, right? There are all of these, we're bombarded with stimuli, and it's these stimuli that shape the thoughts that we have. It's event, response, outcome, right? These are the events, the things that we're exposed to, and then we create outcome and meaning from them. And you're right. It's like, everything counts, from a specific post on social media to a conversation you have with a friend to the book that you're reading and the line in it. Like, all of these are just little data points that your mind is taking in to refine what it thinks about the world. And when you're intentional about your surroundings and surrounding yourself with the right people, then that's going to help you to actually initiate that transformation. And one of the things that I heard recently that I want to think more about is, people need to start listening to others who have achieved what they want to versus the people who are where they're at now. And it's like we have access to the people where we're at now because those are who we're surrounded by. That's why we're there. But the more that we can actually future cast and plug into the podcast, the book, the mentorship, the programs, whatever it is to help you get to that next level and hear the way that they're thinking about things, that then trickles down into your own psychology and kind of helps to formulate and reshape those beliefs. I think that's such a great point.
Incredible. And another thing I like to do is self-reflection. Decisions I make in my business or personal life, I always, after the decision's done, I do a very non-biased outlook into that decision. Like, what were my inputs to make that decision? Why did I come to that conclusion? And what did I miss in that decision-making process? And I think that the more you do that and the more in tune you are with like a framework process is the better you'll get at making decisions and also improving upon where you once were, because you'll see the very obvious mistakes that you made. And it's good to see it. It can be daunting at first when you're like, it's an ego hit. Like, man, I made a poor business decision. I lost $25,000 on this deal. But if I don't address why that happened, I'm not going to fix and improve it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so genius and it's so simple, but I like one of the things that I think is most important is having feedback, right? Because we exist in the 2 or 3 dimensions that we call ourselves, and we have blind spots. We can only see what we see, and it's by being able to acquire that extra awareness that we're going to be able to succeed. And in particular, feedback. And when you're kind of stepping outside of the moment when you make a decision, because you're biased by the context of that moment, it's the emotions, the pressures, the necessities, everything kind of helps you to logic a certain response that you feel like is best, but it's still biased depending on the factors around you. But when you reflect on it and you're outside of that moment and you look back into and observing who you were in that moment, that's when you actually get to the truth without all of that context, without all of that mud trying to get in the way. And I know one of the things that I call one of humanity's fatal flaws, I know you're a huge proponent of this, is the importance of kind of advanced planning and unemotional decision making, right? So to be able to actually create that setting and environment for yourself, to know what's authentic and true and what's being biased or influenced by outside factors, right? And you talk about habits and how we're hyper optimized for short-term benefit versus long-term benefit, and the bias of emotions. But like in particular, how do you feel like that comes into this conversation? How does that impact our relationship with day-to-day choices within our finances?
Oh man, I was about to say, almost every single time, and this is what I used to do myself, is I would make an emotional decision, or I would have an emotion towards something I'm trying to do, and I would kind of like proceed because the emotion really pushed me through. And then I would go backwards and I would put like logical sequences as to why I made that decision. And then I would like justify my decision. And this happens all the time if you're not aware of it in just anything, but specifically finance. Like, especially with like a down or turbulent market, some principles I live by from the financial world is like dollar cost average, index funds, and ETFs, like, very simple principles. But it's amazing that the second the market becomes turbulent or there's emotion riding across the whole entire stock market, that all of a sudden you'll question, should I be dollar cost averaging? Should I be doing this? Maybe I should buy this stock. Maybe I should do this. And you forget, like, you've automated this whole process. You should keep it totally out of your emotional decision making, but you start to have these urges to think towards like, hey, I should do that. And sometimes you make that decision and the whole time your like brain plays tricks on you. Like, I'm doing it because of this, this, and this. But no, the reality is the overriding controller here is the emotion. Emotion is the driver. I talk about that all the time. And then you go backwards. And if you aren't careful, your brain will say, well, you really did it because of this, this, and this. And you ignore the real reason was the emotion. And that really can crush people long-term, especially in the financial world. And they're always like, why can't I get ahead? It's like, because you're paying off this credit card debt. We've automated this whole credit card debt payoff. And then you see the stock market drop and you see an opportunity to invest and you go against the plan. And then you say it was justified because the stock market dropped by 20% and there was an opportunity. But the reality is that shouldn't dictate your plan. You need to automate your whole entire financial plan. I talk about in my national bestseller, the roadmap to financial freedom, because it's an automated financial process and you're taking yourself as the human, the emotional human, which is okay to be emotional, but you're taking it out of the financial process because it just doesn't work typically and it doesn't help you, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, no, that's the point, is it doesn't help you, right? And knowing that today, you can start to build the systems and automations so that you can follow through on the right behaviors when those emotional or uncertain moments arise. It reminds me of Dave Ramsey. He's got his big thing, which is, financial success is 20% head knowledge and 80% behavior, and it's literally just following through on the plan. And it's these fluctuations in the market and these concerns that you have that then cause you to drift off plan. And for me, that's just a matter of discipline, right? Like being 100%. Disciplined to following through on doing what you said you're going to do despite the circumstances around you,
Simplify your life, because the less you have to think about, the less clutter in your mind, the simpler it could be. Frameworks, automations, process, and just do that. Like for me personally, I use Asana for everything. It's a project management tool we use for our team for SOPs. But from a personal side of things, everything goes in there. So like this morning, I had to record a YouTube and a podcast, and I have a process. So like every time I know Tuesdays are my days to do that and record that. So I hit complete, it goes and it does another subtask for the following week. And I know every Tuesday I have to do that. I know I'm training my mind through a system to know the flow I'm supposed to be going in, and it helps you stay consistent and disciplined. So some of these things, as people, we're not disciplined by nature typically. Some people are more type A than others and stuff like that. But the more you can systemize and automate this stuff, because you account for your inadequacies, the more you can learn from Atomic Habits, one of the best books out there, to like build a system to basically like promote good behavior and eliminate bad behavior. Don't have bad food in your pantry, because that's pretty easy to get to. Have only good food. And so when you get hungry at night, you have a craving, even if you make that mistake and eat more, have more calories than expected, at least it's not like Twinkies, at least it's like maybe a banana or maybe, chicken breast or something like that, because that's all that's available to you. Make your life, basically re-engineer your life to make it like really easy to do really good things and really hard to do bad things.
Yeah, no, you kind of are alluding to kind of how I go against the grain in the personal development world, which is everyone talks about, habits and consistency. And I'm like, yes, I agree. I've had 7 years of daily podcast content. Like I get consistency, so you don't got to tell me about that. But the thing is it's not about the habit. Consistency comes as a byproduct of the system that supports the behavior done consistently, right?
Yes.
And that's where it's about environment, it's about systems. That's what generates, it's not the sexiness of let me establish the new habits. Like, no, let me build the right system under the water behind the scenes that promotes the right behavior consistently. And that's how you then form it into a habit.
Yes, 100%. You retrain yourself.
Totally. And what you're referring to, this is beautiful. It's kind of like, I almost think like a golden cycle of, self-improvement, how it relates here, which is you're talking about having your systems and automations in place, right? That's your advanced plan. That is, and I there's a military expression, right? It was like your best plan, survives until first contact with the enemy or whatever, right? Like things change and that happens. Sure. But that's really what the planning is for, is it creates this reference point for what ideal is supposed to be. And that's something that I actually see happen a lot is, people creating a schedule for the day. It's like, something happens and pops up. It's a fire, it's urgent. And now I have to redirect my schedule. And then it's like, the reason that you have the plan in place is so that you can refer to it to then make the right decision in the moment. And that's what I think the discipline is, right? The discipline is knowing the consequences, knowing the commitments you've made, understanding the full context around the choice, and then making the choice that most serves you, even if you don't feel like it, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. That's the first step. Then the great part is once you've made that choice, then it's the reflection that you get to observe that choice to say, okay, these were the conditions, these were the circumstances, these are the factors that caused me to make that choice. Was that the right choice? So that the next time you encounter a similar conditions, now you have that extra insight to know, was this the path I want to move forward with again? And that's how you create this optimization loop, is you have your plan in place, you use that plan to make the right decision in the moment, you observe how you did with feedback, and then you're more prepared to make a better choice, more aligned decision the next time. And it's like, and that is how improvement happens, iteration after iteration. So through that process of awareness, which you've described as like, that is the central piece to everything finances, is just being aware of what's going to work and where you're at with things. So
you're that's your North Star. So like you'll get knocked off. Trust me. We've been obliterated and very recently in many different ways, but it's always, I know where we're headed at all times. And so does my wife. And we're very in tune with communication between each other to say, hey, we know where we're getting. We just got, punched in the face. We got KO'd. It's okay. Let's get up. Let's figure out what the next step is.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So on the process of automations and building systems. So when you think of personal finance, just like 101, these are things that are extremely important just to have in place, to have the right foundation for your, financial, status and wellness. What are some of those core systems that people cannot go without that need to be integrated into their routines?
Yeah, very simple. There are 3 financial statements everybody needs: balance sheet, if you have debt, amortization schedule, and then a budget. So these are the 3 core financial statements. And then on top of that, you need a step-by-step game plan as to what's going on within those financial statements. And I won't bore you guys with what detailed data point goes into each one of those. But if you have those all cohesively working together and you know specifically what's happening, and then you automate that process, which would consist of maybe debt payments, maybe or your bills that you're paying, and then also your investments, because you've already determined based on the math problem that doing this gets me debt free within 1 year, and doing this gets me financially free by 54 years old, or whatever the case is. You've determined that plan before you've even started, pretty much. And so you put those automations in place. And that is by far the most important piece of this whole puzzle, because the math is really easy to figure out. Because then once you automate that process, the only way you can mess this up is if you manually tinker with it, or you manually go do stuff with it. Build a moat around all of that. So when we talk about some of the basics, like an emergency fund and a cash reserve, so that if you do get slapped in the face, your automations still work. You're being attacked from the outside, but your moat's protecting you. And so it doesn't stop that process and that momentum and that compound interest. And I think if you just simplify your life like that, you'd be amazed at how much progress you make. Like, we have multiple people just becoming millionaires left and right, not because we have some get rich quick way. It's just very fundamental, and it works for anybody out there trying to get their finances in order. And it's just systematic at its core, and it doesn't take as much as people think. Like I was talking about this morning I literally said why I started my podcast, and the whole point was because I realized how simple this was, and the opportunity is grand, and it could make such a meaningful impact in your life. And if you just apply it, it will work for the everyday person. And so it was just such an opportunity for me to share that message with so many people. And it's a very simple thing at its core.
Yeah. Yeah, I know things are made to be complex, but they don't need to be,
Yeah.
and
delete, get rid of. I do that all the time.
Yeah, I love that point. And to kind of land the plane here, to tie it back to the beginning, I think this is really poetic. So yeah, you're talking about these are just the fundamentals and the basic systems you can have in place, so you don't have this emotional relationship with, oh, that's my credit card bill, oh, this is my debt payment, but I could spend it somewhere else, we're going on vacation, right? Instead of having those factors and those decisions to be made, you've made them in advance, and then that supports you in sticking with the plan, which is great. But also the idea of being able to pull those 3 statements that you talked about. And yeah, this can all happen passively for you in terms of how you take action on it. But if you invest the time to look at your status in each one of those things, then what you're doing is you're taking a specific action that's reinforcing a more positive money mindset, right? So instead of saying, hey, I want to avoid this. This is too confusing. I don't know what's happening, which is part of, almost like the symptom of a unhealthy money mindset. What you're doing is you're like, hey, on a monthly basis, I look at these 3 statements. I'm on top of my finances. And what is that teaching you? Oh, money isn't something to avoid. It's not something to be afraid of. It actually makes a lot of sense. And then how does that shape the rest of the decisions that you make once you can get consistent with that practice of teaching yourself and training yourself? Hey, this isn't something to be avoided. It's actually something that's a resource for me and to embrace, right?
So one other thing I like to do, I didn't actually add this to this, but I like to do calendar reminders, whether you use Asana or iPhone calendar, it doesn't really matter. But if you're supposed to look at your budget, once a month, like you mentioned, the 30 minutes a month is what we do. Just set up on your calendar, the 28th of every month, you're going to be looking and assessing and, updating it. And then I put all my investment buys, on my calendar just so I can see it and remember it, because it's all automated. So I don't have to, but it's just a remembering point, like you mentioned, because you consistently see it. So it's good behaviors reinforced. And also, I don't have to think about a million things because all of it's automated. It's all scheduled. It will show up on my calendar when it's due or when it's coming due. And I just know it's going to happen regardless. And then you don't have to stress out about anything. And I want people at that spot because it's so easy to attain if you put 10 weeks of effort into it. Our process is 6 months, but it's really 10 weeks of intentional effort to get to this point where it takes 30 minutes a month to master your finances.
Yeah. And what you're describing is 2.0. It's pretty meta, which is you have a system of awareness.
Yeah.
So this is happening behind the scenes and you don't need to touch it, but you're choosing to look at it and you're choosing to be aware of it because that is what drives everything else. So by literally your system for awareness is putting it on your calendar, and now you have these notifications so that your attention is being directed toward it, and that's reinforcing the development of your positive money mindset. And the sky's the limit the more that you get it working for you. So
100%.
Brennan, what a joy, what a conversation. I super appreciate you and what you're bringing to the world. Again, finances are these, it's this ugly conversation. A lot of people are afraid of, a lot of people avoid it, but you're making it so much simpler. And your story of, coming from so much debt and now coming and, transitioning that into such a place of empowerment and supporting other people to find that empowerment for themselves is stewardship to the world. So thank you for doing what you're doing, and hopefully the success continues on and in serving more people with this.
I appreciate it, man. For anyone listening, is where we came from was literally no education and a good chunk of debt. And where we got was what we just talked about in this podcast. So listen to this, embrace it, reach out if you guys have any question. Brian, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a, blessing to share this message.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate you.
You've been listening to Money on My Mind with your host, Brennan Schlagbaum. If you found value in today's discussion, share it with someone who could benefit from it too. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss a money mastery tip. Until next time, stay passionate about your financial journey and keep taking bold steps towards your money goals.